Hello. Today I'd like to go over the basic life cycle of angiosperms. These would be anything that you would see out in nature that has a flower. All the fruits, vegetables, things like that. This is the basic life cycle of what they go through. It won't look obviously exactly like this, but it's going to be very, very similar to anything with a flower. So here we have like a cherry tree. And this is in the Sporophyte stage. The dominant stage of this life cycle is in the Sporophyte stage. And in this particular example, on the flower you have both the male and the female parts. The male would be the stamens, the things like the anther and the filament. And then the female would be the stigma, style, and the ovaries. And in this flower they're on the same one, but just keep in mind when it comes to flowers that they may have a male flower or they may have a female flower, but the basic idea looks like this. So of course up here at the top, this thing called an anther, is the top of the stamen. It is the male part and it's producing pollen, which is basically the sperm of the flowers. And these guys can get over to the stigma of the female part through a variety of ways. Maybe a bee will come along, a moth, butterfly, hummingbird, even humans on occasion, the wind. There's lots and lots of ways that these guys can get over there, but it does happen, and it's pretty amazing how it all works out. So once they reach up here, the top of the stigma is a little bit sticky, so the pollen will stick to there. And what's unique also about this group is inside the pollen, there are actually two sperm, which is much different than the way, like, say, humans will reproduce. We use one sperm, one egg. These guys, they actually have two sperm, and they will form this pollen tube down through the style and into the ovaries. And what happens is, once they get down here into the ovaries, each sperm will then fertilize an egg. One sperm will fertilize the egg and become a zygote. The other sperm will fertilize an egg and become this material called endosperm. Endosperm is basically food. It's like milk in humans. It's like the food that a baby would need. So here's the zygote will then turn into an embryo. And the embryo will use this endosperm as food while it's growing. Another interesting note to notice is that the ovary walls basically turn into the fruit part of a seed, and that's the part that usually we will eat. But the seed itself, well, actually the fruit part is not part of the seed, it's just a protective covering of the seed. The seed itself is actually two things. It is the endosperm and the baby embryo. And of course, once that seed falls to the ground, gets eaten, moved around the forest, whatever the case may be, it will grow up into a young sporophyte. It will sprout some roots and shoots, and eventually will turn back into whatever it is. In this case, it was a cherry tree. So this life cycle is a little bit more complex. It's the most complex life cycles that we're going to go over for the plants, but it would basically happen just like this for anything that has a flower. And the other cool thing to remember is that the two sperm go down the pollen tube. They each fertilize an egg. One becomes the embryo, one becomes the endosperm, and those two things together will become a seed. So a seed is much different than a pollen.